Hello, this is Yogeshwar 7000 again, and I'm back on my series on stories from the Puranas again. And today's story is going to be in continuation of our last video, where we saw how the Pandavas went to the forest and they had the opportunity of meeting with the dead. They met with Abhimanyu, and while they were there in the forest, they visited, and while they were visiting, rather, King Dhritarashtra and also their mother Kunti, who were living in the forest towards the last parts of their lives, or the ending parts of their lives, as it was customary as per Hindu culture of those times. Dhritarashtra also had the opportunity of meeting his 100 dead sons, and even Gandhari for that matter. And Kunti also had the opportunity of meeting with the dead Abhimanyu, who was brought back to life. So I'm not going to go in details as to how the dead were brought back to life. Please refer to the earlier video. Today we are going to be continuing with that story, and by the way, these are not stories, these are coming directly from the Puranas. So I will request you to have, rather, complete faith and belief in it. It's not a figment of imagination, or it's not coming to you as some kind of a story which has been published either in paper or on the internet. Okay, this is coming directly from the Puranas. So after meeting the dead, when the Pandavas, and also after meeting their uncle Dhritarashtra, his wife Gandhari, their own mother Kunti, and also Sanjay, who had accompanied Dhritarashtra into the forest. And after meeting with the dead, of course, when the Pandavas came back to their kingdom, which was Hastinapur, we are going to be talking about that part of the story now. So when they came back from the forest, when the Pandavas came back to Hastinapur from the forest, the king Dhritarashtra was burnt together with Gandhari and Kunti. So this is how the end came of Dhritarashtra the king and his wife Gandhari, and even the Pandavas' mother Kunti, who was living with them in the forest in a small hermitage. Okay, and how did this happen? Because somehow there was fire in the forest and they got burnt. Okay, and Sanjay, who had accompanied Dhritarashtra and his wife Gandhari and Kunti, Pandava's mother, to the forest, was not there at that time. So Dhritarashtra and these two women were quite vulnerable, and the fire consumed them, because we have all kinds of fires. They come from nowhere into the forest. These fires keep coming. Even in today's day and age, there are fires in the forest. So there was a fire in the forest that time, and it consumed the blind king Dhritarashtra, along with Gandhari, his wife, and Kunti, the Pandava's mother. Okay, and when Sanjay came back, he was pretty sad to know that. And the Pandavas by that time had reached Hastinapur and had started with their worldly duties. And King Yudhishthira, who was the king of Hastinapur, heard this from sage Narada, as it's called in the West. Actually, the Sanskrit name is Narad. Okay, so sage Narad, or he's also the sage of the gods, so he's actually called Devarishi. So he's the rishi of the gods. He, of course, has that power to be at any place at his own wish. And that's how, through sage Narad, King Yudhishthira came to know of the fire, that the fire had consumed Dhritarashtra, his uncle, Gandhari, his aunt, and his own mother Kunti, and he became very, very sad to know that. And here another thing was happening at the same time, that while the Kauravas family became extinct, because of course the sons, the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra had already died in the battle, and here the father Dhritarashtra along with Gandhari also died in the forest fire. Everything was destroyed. The descendants of Yadus, okay, which are actually Yadavas, were also destroyed. Okay, so they were the descendants of Yadu, and that's some other place. They were destroyed, and how they were destroyed is described in the Puranas. Is they got intoxicated by drinking wine, and they fought against each other, and they died in the presence of Krishna and Balarama. They were also Krishna and Balarama, two brothers. They were in the same I should say caste, it's okay to say caste, Yadus, Yaduvanshis as they were called. So while Krishna and Balarama was there, in their presence, the sons of Yadu, the descendants of Yadu, who were called Yadavas or Yaduvanshis, were destroyed by drinking wine and fighting against each other. Okay, and then when Balarama, Krishna's brother, saw that, because he was also a Yaduvanshi, he also left his mortal body. Okay, and Lord Krishna also left his body. He was actually struck by an arrow of a hunter, which he actually got a curse from a Brahmin, and he wanted to respect that curse. So this was God's Maya. It was a creation. God knew that's going to happen. And of course we know that Krishna is the Lord. He is God, Vishnu Avatara, or the incarnation of Vishnu himself. He knew all this is Maya. It's an illusion. He had to pay respect to that Brahman's curse, where he would be killed in this fashion. And so he got a arrow from a hunter who mistook him for an animal, and he got that arrow in his feet, and he just died. So here Balarama, Krishna's brother, died, and also Krishna himself died, and the entire Yadu's descendants, which were the Yaduvanshis or the Yadava clan, they all died because they fought against each other. And there, the other part we already discussed, how the Vanshas or the descendants of Kuru, which were called Kauravas, and the last Kauravas left was Dhritarashtra and his wife Gandhari. They were also consumed by fire. And of course Pandu's wife, or Pandava's mother Kunti, also died with them. So everybody was dying here. So this video is about how the death comes up for these great personalities, as has been described in the Puranas by sage Vyasa or Veda Vyasa. Okay, this is how the end came, even of Lord Krishna, because we are all bound by the laws of karma, the laws of this world, where whoever is born in this world has to leave his worldly existence at some point or the other. And then when Arjuna heard of this as well, he also became very, very unhappy about this, and he performed the funeral duties, and he saw the dead body of Arjuna. And we all know that Arjuna, in the great battle of Mahabharata, was his charioteer. He was the one who drove the chariot, where Arjuna was the fighter, and he came out victorious in that battle of Mahabharata. And of course Arjuna was very close to Lord Krishna, as we all know. He became very, very sad, and he went to perform the last funeral rites of Lord Arjuna. So here we have to understand even God is bound by the laws of this universe, where he got born and then he has to die as a mortal, and his funeral duties have to be performed by somebody, and Arjuna did that. Okay, and he collected fuel and burned the body of Lord Krishna, and he also burned the body of Balarama, Lord Krishna's brother, as per the Vedic rites. The Hindu Vedic rites, or the Vedic rites. The word Hindu came on pretty late, I think, but as per the Vedic rites, they were burnt. And Arjuna then went to Dwarka city, and we all know that Lord Krishna was the king of Dwarka city, and he removed all the inhabitants of the city, and then the entire city was drowned in the waters of the ocean. So this city, which was being ruled by Lord Krishna, was on the seashore. It was called Dwarka. And after Arjuna told the inhabitants to leave the city was drowned in the ocean, as it is described in the Puranas. Okay, so here we're discussing how everything is ending, and this is how it all ended after the Mahabharata, and how the Pandavas went to Hastinapur to rule, and their mother died, and how the Kaurava sons of Dhritarashtra, 100 sons, they died in battle, and eventually their father and mother, Dhritarashtra and the mother Gandhari, they were also consumed by fire in the ocean. So while Arjuna was taking all the people with him after getting out of Dwarka, because Dwarka was consumed by the ocean as it was predicted by the great sages, he also felt very weak on the way back. Okay, so he removed the inhabitants of the city, and he was going back with the inhabitants. Some inhabitants of the city Dwarka may have left for some other place of their own, on their own, and he had some inhabitants of Dwarka city with him returning back, and he felt very weak on the way, and he came across a band of robbers, and there was a robber by the name of Abhiras. He plundered all the wealth and took all the wealth away, which was being carried by Arjuna out of Dwarka, because Dwarka, as we just discussed, had to be consumed by the ocean, and was consumed by the ocean. It sank. And also kidnapped the wives of Krishna. Can you imagine? The great powerful warrior like Arjuna could not help himself against the robbers. Okay, he could not save the wealth of Dwarka and even the wives of Krishna. It has been believed that Krishna had 16,000 wives, but here in the Puranas there is no mention. Maybe there would be a mention in some other script, but 16,000 wives is a lot of wives. He was bringing back 16,000 wives with the inhabitants, with the wealth of Dwarka as well, and he was plundered by the robbers. And this robber by the name of Abhiras, he took the wealth and the wives of Krishna as well. And Krishna and Arjuna felt, who was a great friend of Krishna, felt, and a disciple and a follower, whatever you may call him. Arjuna was a follower and a disciple and a devotee of Krishna, friend of Krishna, whatever you may like to call him, because he was everything to Krishna. Krishna loved him so much. He could not save the wives of Krishna, and he was known to be so powerful. And so he came back, and when he came back to his kingdom, which was Hastinapur, and that part where also used to be called as Indraprastha, he just said that, okay, I'm not going to rule. He was very, very disappointed, and he was living in that place called Indraprastha, Arjuna, and he made Vajra, who was Aniruddha's son, the king of the place. Okay, And then Arjuna was so sad and so sorry and so disappointed that he could not protect the wealth of Dwarka, the people of Dwarka. Well, he could to some extent, but the wives of Krishna, and 16,000 of them, they were all taken away by the robbers. So he went to Vedavyasa, Maharishi Vedavyasa, and he said that he was powerless. And then Vyasa, the great sage, he said, well, there'll be a time when you and Vishnu will reincarnate in another yuga, okay, and then your heroic strength will be manifested again. So hearing this, Arjuna got some kind of a solace, but he was still having a very sorrowful heart, and he went to Yudhishthira in Hastinapur, the great king who was ruling Hastinapur, and informed him that this is how everything ended. Lord Krishna died, his brother Lord Balarama died, and Lord Krishna's wives, 16,000 wives, were kidnapped. He couldn't do a thing. He couldn't even protect the wealth of Dwarka. Of course, that was not as important as protecting the wives of Krishna. And he told the whole story to Yudhishthira, and Yudhishthira got very upset. The eldest brother, as we know, of the Pandavas, who was actually the king of Hastinapur. Of course, all the brothers was ruling. All the 5 brothers were ruling, but the main king was Yudhishthira, the eldest Pandava. He wanted to leave everything. He wanted to just go and retire to the Himalayas, to the mountains. Okay, and he lost all interest in ruling. So he installed Parikshit as the king of Hastinapur, okay, and Parikshit was Uttara's son. So Uttara was the wife of Abhimanyu, and Abhimanyu was the son of Arjuna, and he was the only descendant or a successor left of the Pandavas. And there's a whole story why the other children got killed. I'm not going to get into that. So what Yudhishthira did was that he was so upset that Abhimanyu, of course, was dead. His wife Uttara was living, and Uttara and Abhimanyu had a son called Parikshit, who was living with the Pandavas at that time, and he was 36 years old at that time. So he installed Parikshit on the throne, the 36-year-old Parikshit on the throne. And he went out in the company of his other 4 brothers and their wife Draupadi to the Himalayas. So the 5 Pandavas went to the Himalayas because they were so dejected, so disillusioned with life, that they said, okay, now we're just going to devote our lives to God, and we'll retire to the mountains, the Himalayas. Okay, and then here we know that Parikshit ruled for another 36 years in Hastinapur. So he was 36 at that time when he got the throne, and then he ruled for another 36 years. And then how he died was described in another video which I made as to how Parikshit died because of the curse of the sage whom he put a dead serpent around his neck. That's another story, so please refer to that video as well. And finally Takshak, the great snake Takshak, bites him and kills him, but that's another story. We'll not get into that. We are discussing how the Pandavas got disillusioned by hearing the news that everybody died. Their uncle died, their mothers died, and the aunt died, and then here they heard Krishna died, their biggest ally and friend. Balarama died, the Yaduvanshi clan got destroyed. So everything was getting destroyed. So they felt very disillusioned, and all the 5 Pandavas, the eldest being Yudhishthira, they went up to the Himalayas. Okay, and then when they went up to the Himalayas, finally what happens was that they also eventually die in the Himalayas, and that's another story, and we'll discuss that some other time as to how the 5 Pandavas were able to go up to the heavens. So this was the story how everything ended, how the Pandavas ended, and what happened after, they went to the forest by installing Parikshit on the throne of Hastinapur, and then how the Kauravas ended, how Lord Krishna ended his life, how Balarama ended, how their entire Yadavanshi clan ended, how the forest fire consumed Dhritarashtra and his wife Gandhari and Kunti, the mother of Pandavas. Everything just, started to, fall apart, and they all died, including the Pandavas. And so hopefully you did enjoy this video on stories from the Puranas, like always. And in the meanwhile, I will recommend subscribe to my channel and check out my website. There is a link below, and I will see you with an interesting topic in Vedic astrology or stories from the Puranas very soon. Goodbye.